Welcome back to another episode of Fight Night Picks Kicks. Can't wait to offer up a final preview and predictions of UFC 263, Adesanya versus Vettori in the rematch, Figueiredo versus Moreno in the rematch, and the fight that is Leon Edwards and Nate Diaz. We got a lot of great stuff over on the channel. Winning PFL fighter Chris Wade, some interesting stuff over there. Losing PFL fighter Tyler Diamond, nonetheless, great stuff. And you can also check out our own Joshua Hart's full card betting guide on the website. It's fightnightpicks.com. What's he feeling for best bets? Pannie, Kianzad, Bilal Muhammad, remember the name, and Davison Figueiredo. All sorts of great stuff over there. So check it out, fightnightpicks.com. And as we always say, let's get into it. Fight Night Picks is brought to you by Vertiball. Head on over to their website. It's vertiball.com. And listen, it's an awesome product. It's a local company out of New Brunswick, Canada. So make sure you support those guys locally as well as Fight Night Picks. But they're the only mountable portable muscle massager. They can stick on any smooth surface. They've got an industrial strength suction cup. Can support over 100 pounds of pressure. You can get really into those deep knots. I have one here at home. I use it for my back and my shoulders from holding up that Fight Night Picks Pick'em trophy. But listen, make sure you check them out. It's a great product. Like I said, they're recommended by physiotherapists, masseuses, and chiropractors across Canada, the US, UK, and Australia. And they're used by countless professional athletes like Minkah Fitzpatrick on screen there, as well as Clellan Farrell of the Raiders. So if you head into the cart, make sure you check them out. So I've got a Vertiball massager in my cart right there. Use the promo code FNP. You're going to save 10% off your order. You're supporting this company here that I'm very passionate about in New Brunswick, Canada, and you're helping out us as well. So make sure you check them out, vertiball.com, promo code FNP, 10% off your order. And without further ado, let's get into it.
Ladies and gentlemen, recorded in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. It's time for Fight Night Picks with your host, Craig and Matt Allen.
Ooh boy, and we are back and set for UFC 263. As always, one half of your hosting duo, Craig Allen. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Craig Allen FNP. With me to my left, to your right, as always, every single Saturday, provided the UFC is on a Saturday. Sometimes it's not, but 2 hours early before the prelims, Matt Allen. You can find him on Twitter and Instagram at Matt Allen FNP. Matt, the chat is already going insane. Jesus is saying hit the likes, giving it the dab. We've got Sean McMinn saying let's go. And Jack E, well, he wants you to hit the like button as well as OJ's. And this wildlife with those Canadian flags out there, and so does Adam. Matt, people are finally getting that the Canadians on the rise.
I like how excited you are. I know I'm excited too. Tonight's card is one of the big ones. Like, this is why we get excited as MMA fans. I try to describe to my non-MMA fan friends, like, what the Super Bowl equivalent is in MMA. It's cards like these. We have one of the biggest stars in the sport fighting tonight. We have a rematch of what many consider Fight of the Year from last year. Oh, and by the way, to top it all off, the cherry on top of all of this is Nate Diaz versus Leon Edwards for a total of 5 rounds. It's going to be an absolutely wild fight night.
It's going to be absolutely insane. 14 total fights. Obviously, early on in the week, we were doing our videos. We were recording on Monday night. We had Matt Frevola, Frank Camacho right in the chamber. But again, as we said at the start of the week, wishing nothing but the best for Frank Camacho in that car wreck. In steps Terrance McKinney. That's a low-key, really interesting fight for this division.
It is, and it sucks too for Frank Camacho. Like you said, get well, Frank Camacho, because you never want to hear someone's out with, an injury like that. But for Matt Frevola, it's kind of a weird fight, right? You go in, you can definitely get excited for a fight against a guy like Frank Camacho. He's going in there for fight of the night bonuses, for performance bonuses. It'll be really interesting to see what version of Matt Frevola we get, and especially after his last loss to Arman Tsarukyan, you know he's going to want to rebound well.
100%. So I am really looking forward to that. If this is your first time with Fight Night Picks Kicks, as everybody's saying over there in the chat, you toss a like, you make sure you subscribe, and there's going to be lots of great content down the line. I know we had a video coming out, or that came out earlier on this week. We had the chance to break one of those Panini Prism boxes that's in front of Matt that I keep pointing at, and he doesn't want to grab to show it off. But yeah, we had one of those breaks, and later on tonight, we have the fight companion for the pay-per-view portion of the card. We're going to be giving away the green version of the Ngannou and Derek Brunson card. So make sure you check that out. But again, if this is the first time, we're going to talk about a couple of fight of the nights. We're going to throw it down through the entire card, offer up a final preview, prediction, and go on from there, as well as question mark kicks parlay. But Matt, 14 fights, really, really busy.
Yeah, again, I could not be more excited. 2 title fights. I think the fight I'm the most excited for is Moreno versus Figueiredo. I'm just kind of thinking all day long. The rematch of, and of course, fight of the night, perfect segue. I really do think this is going to be the fight of the night tonight. When you look at just what both guys were able to do in their last fight, and then you realize not only what the stakes are, but the fact that Moreno and Figueiredo constantly improve, even though they both are considered championship quality fighters, is insane. Normally you see guys plateau well before they ever really get to the title shot. So the fact that we're getting a fight that was already one of the best fights ever last year, and you're probably going to get a better version of both guys in this rematch, I couldn't be more excited.
Yeah, it should be great. Sean McMinn hitting up the super chat saying, biggest reason for people betting Moreno, where are we? A, plays with Legos. B, gave Nate Diaz knocks the Figgy weight cut. And it always does worry you. Figueiredo, obviously, he was one of the last guys to weigh in. You had Figueiredo, Riddell, and you had Steven Peterson. Figueiredo, was he making people wait? I mean, they were saying on the show, like, he had 1 more pound to cut leading right up to it. He ends up weighing in on the dot. Same thing with Brad Riddell. Came right in at 155. For Peterson, came in at 128.5, and we will talk about that. But as always, your Fight of the Night screen presented by Manscaped. Make sure you check them out. It's manscaped.com. Use promo code FMP. You're going to get 20% off and free shipping. And when I look at this fight, the first one was amazing. You said it. I mean, could it have been a fight of the year? It was definitely a fight of the year contender last year, and it was a late addition to that kind of conversation. But it was such a good one. Obviously, the nut shots kind of played a part into the final result, and that's why it was a draw. But this should be a great fight. Brandon Woodward saying, do you Figueiredo that Moreno will win? We'll have to see what happens there. But I do love this fight. And our second choice, Movsar Evloev taking on Hakeem Dawadu. Man, I absolutely love this fight, and I still don't totally love the line on Evloev, and I've been really high on him since he came into the UFC. But me and Hakeem, you even look at it in his fight, his last time out against a really tough opponent in Zubair Tukhugov. What was Tukhugov doing at the end of that fight? Running away from Dawadu, who wanted to fight. Like, this is a guy that will fight, will throw down, and he's an exciting guy to watch.
Without a doubt, and that's kind of why this had to be one of the Fight of the Night contenders, just because both guys do love to move forward. And for Movsar Evloev, you love his skill set. Like, you love the wrestling, you love the striking. Everything he does, I really do enjoy. The thing I don't like, though, is the fact that his fights tend to be closer than they probably even have to be. But that's why this should be phenomenal. Hakeem Dawadu is going to bring the fight to Movsar Evloev, and if Evloev is what people think he is, which is a future contender at 145, we're going to figure it out tonight, because I think we both can agree Hakeem Dawadu is one of those kind of dark horses who are outside of the rankings at 145, who I doubt a lot of ranked guys want to fight Dawadu, and I doubt a lot of unranked guys can really be in there with him, and that's why this fight should be phenomenal.
Wyatt Kenny, the Canadian, saying never betting against Hakeem, win, lose, or draw. The dude's a beast, 100%. He is mean, and he's got a big fight coming up today. So, a couple other things. As always with question mark kicks, we're going to be going over the votes. We're going to be talking about them over at Fight Night Picks on Instagram. You can find us over there. Sometimes there's some different content. Sometimes there's some rehash content. There's usually always something in the story that you can follow along with. Kiko saying, hometown boy, got to cheer for him. And Stockholder saying, is there going to be an and new? Well, Matt, I mean, listen, open your eyes. What do you see?
Wow.
Chip Magnet Punk, the shirt of the day. I mean, who doesn't love a little bit of CM Punk? And from last week, it was a good one. I mean, hey, it's obviously a shame, as was in the comment section earlier, that the Tom Breeze fight fell out. It was also a shame that Mason Jones poked Alain Patrick, who no longer wanted to compete. That would have been better, but I had the opportunity to go 9-3, Matt, on the year. You had the opportunity 7-5, but you've got the year, and I'm coming back for it. So ultimately, a good week last week. We really want to pick back up on it coming up today. So let's start off at the bottom of this card. We have Carlos Felipe taking on Jake Collier, and it's a battle of two of the bigger guys at heavyweight. Now, we saw it at Jake Collier again for this fight, coming in at 264.5. For Felipe, he was 264 his last time, 262.5 this time, so giving up a couple of pounds. Not that it makes that much of a difference when you're up at the top, but both guys primary strikers. I mean, both guys quite athletic for their build. And for Jake Collier, so weird that this guy was a former RFA middleweight champ, fought at light heavyweight, now he's up at heavyweight. We've had two kind of performances in 2020 to 2021. One against Tom Aspinall, where both of these guys would lose to Tom Aspinall. Yeah. And then you had the fight against Jean Vellante, where I would hazard to guess that both guys would beat Jean Vellante, but Jake Collier did look great in that fight. 3 30-27s out there. Obviously, he had a cut on the bridge of the nose at the start of the fight, but really did a good job mixing in the athleticism, mixing in the combinations, and really good kicks, and he can kick quite high too. So I do like this fight. Felipe with the boxing, Jake Collier with a bit more of the well-rounded skill set, but I really do like this one.
This is as fun of an unranked heavyweight fight as you could possibly get. And the thing about Jake Collier, I don't know if it was just because he shaved the beard, but I did think he looked better physically on the scale than he has looked at heavyweight. I know it's something that we always bring up about how he was the former LFA middleweight champion. It's just how wild it is to see a former middleweight be up at heavyweight now. It took the scales really as heavy as heavyweight can. But to his credit, I did think physically he did look better on the scale. And I'll say the same thing about Felipe. Both guys did weigh in that 260 range, but I actually thought both guys looked better than they have traditionally. And I do think that that plays into just how big this card is. I do think the fighters in this card realize, hey, we're doing a fight with 3 5-round fights, 2 title fights, and Israel Adesanya on here, the biggest star in the sport. There's going to be a lot more eyes attached to the card, and it just really is nice seeing the professionalism, for the most part, top to bottom on this card. But to get that out of the way, I like Carlos Felipe in this fight for these reasons. I love his forward movement and the fact that he can pretty much eat anything at heavyweight. His chin is absurd, and I know having a chin's not the best skill in the world, and me knowing he has a chin means that it has been checked at least a few times in the past, but I do like Felipe against a lot of unranked heavyweights out there. I do think that just his cardio, chin, and overall volume alone can beat a lot of unranked guys out there. Am I going to go out there and pick Carlos Felipe against like a Sergey Pavlovich? Probably not, but do I think he can go out there and beat Jake Collier in what's probably going to be a very fun fight to start the night? Yes, I do.
Yeah, for me, and I mean, going over to the comment section really quick, Miguel saying Felipe with the knockout, Adam responding to an earlier comment saying, why is this a trap? And I'll kind of go through it because I can see a path to victory for both guys, but what I do like out of Collier is a little bit more output, a little bit more offense, and a little bit more well-rounded, and that's why I like Collier in this fight. If he's going to go in there and kick a little bit, if he's going to try and use space, that L-step, there's sneaky little moves that he has. I do like Jake Collier in this fight, but I can definitely see it being very, very close. In terms of the odds on this one, they are close. Carlos Felipe open to -200, dropped to about a -300? He's now -165. So the money has come in on Jake Collier. He's one of the bigger movers and shakers at about a 19% clip since open. And right now, you can get Jake Collier around a +137. So I like him at that spot. And if I have a look over at Fight Night Picks over on Instagram, we've got 79% Felipe, 21% Collier. And we also have the Homeless American saying, since you said smash, I will now dislike. Homeless American, I mean, wishing nothing but the best for you, but you don't have to dislike us. We're just having fun.
Exactly.
I mean, hey, come on. All right, Matt. So I'm going to go with Collier. You're going with Felipe. But either way, it is a really good fight. So we move into our next fight, Matt. We have a guy who has a little bit different of a hairstyle than you're going to get in the picture. He's kind of rocking the side part like me. Ziam, the former European K1 kickboxing champion. We also have a great fighter in Luigi Vendramini. Now, a lot of people are saying, guys, you got it wrong. He's the Italian stallion, but there's no way he's from Brazil. I can assure you one thing. This guy is definitely from Brazil. And for Luigi Vendramini, very, very well-rounded. Muay Thai background. Really did a good job on the Muay Thai scene in Brazil, but also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. You saw the success he had against Eliseu Zaleski dos Santos in his one-off fight at 170 pounds on incredibly short notice, which he ultimately lost. But it's one of those losses where you still gain stock. For Ziam, you look at it. You lose to Don Madge on incredibly short notice, similar to the Vendramini fight with Zaleski. And then he gets a really good win over Jamie Mullarkey. And even though Mullarkey was able to get 5 takedowns in that fight, Ziam, once it was standing, was able to tee off. This is another one that worries me a little bit, and I consider putting it on the question mark kicks parlay because right now, Ziam at the start of the week, slight favorite. Now the odds are about par. I will tip my hand. I still really like Luigi Vendramini in this fight, but again, I can see it playing out both ways.
So this is my only issue with this fight. I think we're giving Luigi Vendramini's striking a little bit too much credit. I really do see this more as a striker versus a grappler. It's not to doubt that Vendramini can't strike with Ziam throughout this fight, but he can't beat him in a purely striking matchup. I think Vendramini is at least going to have to threaten with the takedown to really open up the other facets of his game. For Ziam, the speed really is going to be his key. If he can keep this fight on the longest range possible, prod at him with your front kicks, use your jab, use your straight punches, I really do think Ziam could go out there and put on a very, very impressive performance. But I do have to agree with you at the end of the day. I do just think Vendramini's ability to mix it up and the fact that he can control Ziam a little bit better once it does hit the mat than I do think Jamie Mullarkey could in their fight, that I do think Vendramini is going to win this fight. But this is the thing. These are two prospects with a very, very high ceiling. Like, I don't think if Ziam loses this fight, he's going to all of a sudden be washed or not be what we think he could be. And I don't think the same for Vendramini. Like, I still think that these are two fighters that have very bright futures. futures, no matter what the outcome of this fight is.
I mean, both of us with Vendramini, if we have a look again at Fight Night Picks over on Instagram, it is close, but 65% going with Vendramini to the 35% that have Ziam. Again, Ziam was a bit of a favorite at the start of the week, and John Kalichak saying I was leaning Luigi, but now I'm thinking Ziam. Why? Is that because we went with who we went with? We'll go with who we have, and you go with who you have. But yeah, for me, it's Luigi Vendramini. Matt, we move into our next fight that apparently I just made a big mistake and left Montefiore and Tabitha Ricci there. So while I make a little bit of an adjustment, we'll move up, we'll talk Matt Frevola, Terrance McKinney, and then we'll move back and we'll talk about Hooper Peterson. An easy mistake to make. But Matt, when we look at Frevola McKinney, not a similar opponent as to what Frevola had in Frank Camacho.
No, not at all. But this is the weird thing for Matt Frevola. Like, Matt Frevola is coming into this fight. It's weird. Has Matt Frevola ever been the ace side to a fight? Probably not. But in this fight, he definitely will be. And it's going to be interesting. He had that weird kind of switch of opponents in the last minute with Arman Sarukian in his last performance. And it was just sort of unfortunate for Matt Frevola. Because he was going to go in there. And it's not like it was going to be such a stylistic matchup that Matt Frevola was definitely going to win. But a fight against Sarukian is a tough night out for anybody. Like, he is one of those dark horses of the division where you're almost too good to fight unranked guys, but you're too good to fight ranked guys who don't want to lose. It's a really weird situation. I still feel like that was one of those performances where Matt Frevola gained a little bit of stock in, and I do think that he's going to use that experience and go in there and put on a really good performance this time out.
And I mean, when I looked at this one, like Matt Frevola, his brother, entered the chat and said, hey, like, he's really been working his ground game. I think he's going to be able to get a good win here. If you do look at it, I mean, Nicholas saying that McKinney's fought nothing but cans, but if you do look at his 3-fight win streak in 2021, yes, the first win against, who was it, Deidre, he had a crazy knockout in 16 seconds. Then it was 17 seconds. His last fight was against a decent level of competition, but still, not a Matt Frevola. It is a tricky one. Again, if you do like McKinney to get the win, maybe you like him by finishing the first round and a half or so. But after that, Matt Frevola could definitely take over. So for me, I like Frevola, but as was said over in the chat, and I mean, we got a Francis Ngannou there, but I did see Galactus saying Frevola all day. But there's also a couple of people going with McKinney. Kiko CR saying, I think this is a super difficult debut for McKinney. It definitely is. But yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see how things go. Both of us with Frevola right now. And if you flip it on over at Fight Night Picks, you know the drill. 59% Frevola to 41% McKinney. The fans are giving McKinney his due.
They shouldn't. Like this thing, why is short notice only a big deal for main event fighters? Like, short notice really does matter. The fact that for the last 2 months, Matt Frevola has been getting ready for a fight. And I know Terrance McKinney had a fight, 4 days ago now? 5 days ago now? But still, I just think it's a very different way of getting ready, and I do like Matt Frevola in this fight.
All right, Matt. So we'll flip it on back to the fight that was supposed to be before it. We have Chase Hooper, Steven Peterson. Now, Steven Peterson came in at 128.5 pounds. I thought he looked slightly gaunt, but like not terrible. And so you have to wonder, was it a strategic weight miss or not?
No.
Now, the last time that we had a fighter miss somewhat similar to this, it was Diego Ferreira when he took on one really tough out in Gregor Gillespie. And of course, I had Ferreira in that fight, just like I had Peterson at the start of this week. So obviously the weight cut scares me. Now, if we have a look at the odds for this one, I was a little bit surprised. Peterson opened a -180. Then the line popped up at one point. Now it popped up again. Peterson now a -107. The money this week's come in on Chase Hooper at a 44% clip from open. He's now a -114 favorite. Again, if you look at it for both guys, I mean, Chase Hooper in the UFC, the one loss was a really tough one against Andre Fili, who just had a fight booked, and it's a really good one. And if you look at it for Peterson,
Alex Caceres.
You got it. If you look at it for Peterson, he's lost more than he's won since LFA won against Leandro Higo in 2017. You look at the wins. Dustin Winner with LFA. Matt Bassett won Martin Bravo, which I made a mistake, and I said Polo Reyes, Martin Bravo. I got them mixed up during the week. Why Kenny saying Chase Hooper's my favorite fighter. Paul Keeping saying Hooper is better than he looks. I have a tricky time with this, so what are you thinking?
Steven Peterson should win this fight. Because here's the problem. You brought up the Carlos Diego Ferreira fight. You kind of just glossed over the fact that he missed weight, looked good, his cardio fell off a cliff, mainly largely because he missed weight, and then Greg Gillespie came back in that fight. Missing weight really matters, guys. There's no such thing as strategic weight missing, unless you just weigh so much it's not even funny to miss by like 5 pounds. If you miss by 3 pounds, it means that you tried to cut the weight. You tried, but then your body gave out and you couldn't cut the weight anymore. The only question I had regarding Steve Peterson maybe winning this fight coming into this was, is his cardio so much better than Chase Hooper's that he'd defend all the takedowns and then just be such a superior version of himself in the third round, and Chase Hooper's so diminished from all the takedown attempts that Peterson could get the takedown, could defend the takedowns and get the knockout. Chase Hooper, his job just gets so much easier. Now you're fighting a guy whose cardio will probably be largely affected due to the fact that he had such a hard weight cut. I like Hooper a lot more than I did at the start of the week. Listen, I'm not so confident I'm going out there to put money on it because, listen, I see this as two entry-level UFC fighters, if we're being completely honest. Peterson might have a few more wins, but just look at his UFC record. He's like, 2-5? And even his level of competition is not that good. And for Hooper, we're just trying to figure out how good he is right now, you know? Like, he's not as good as Alex Caceres, but he's better than Peter Barrett. So there's a really big margin right there. So for me, I do think that Chase Hooper should have the advantage in this fight, and I do think he's going to get it to the mat at some point.
All right, Matt. Well, I mean, again, when I look at this one, it is really difficult. Miguel coming in here with the best comments of the week, saying Hooper is going to make Peterson do the hula hoop. We talked about it. I mean, Chase Hooper is a guy that's been training with the Thompsons, father and son, Steven and Senior, if you want to go that route. And now Chris Weidman's back in the gym. I mean, just great things happening in that corner of the world. But when I do look at this one, odds are relatively close. If we look at the votes, 62% on Hooper, 38% Peterson. I'm going to switch over. I'm going to go with Chase Hooper just based on that weight miss. It really does scare me. But again, you worry because, like, it is a tight fight, and a Peterson one, I wouldn't be overly surprised. So take everything I said with a grain of salt. We're both going with Hooper, but I don't feel all that confident. Nicholas Cage, glad you could find the chat, and we are the nerds that you were looking for.
We can't all find the Declaration of Independence, Nick Cage, okay?
We're just the nerds you were looking for. Pannie Kianzad's taking on the Canadian Alexis Davis, and a couple of people out there in the comments early on in the week said, how does damage really play into the judge's hands? It doesn't, but again, if you're watching a fight and somebody's... Well, it does. If you're watching a fight and somebody gets bloody and red at the start, it's probably going to help score for the other fighter. And for Alexis Davis, well, she normally gets bloody and red in the first round. In the second round, she kind of gets her sea legs under her. She gets going, and then she's swimming in the third round. Or losing. Pannie Kianzad's a weird case because she's fought good competition and she's fought bad competition. She's lost against decent. She's won against bad, so it is a really tricky one, especially taking on a former title challenger in Alexis Davis that has a finish win over Amanda Nunes. She's fought Liz Carmouche. She has a win over the other Canadian, Sarah Kaufman. Like, really big wins in Alexis Davis's past. And even her last fight, she did look good against Sabina Mazo, no matter what you think of Sabina Mazo. So this one should be a really good fight.
Like, litmus test, gatekeeper, whatever you want to call it, that's what Alexis Davis is at this stage in her career. And I don't look at that in a bad way. I really think that's a positive for her because most fighters at her age in this weight class are just completely out of the sport. And the fact that she is able to stay very competitive with a lot of those prospects and upper level fighters is really impressive, honestly. Now, here's the thing. Do I think she's good enough at this stage in her career to beat Pannie Kianzad? I don't, and that's the unfortunate thing. I think Alexis Davis can go out there and get scrappy wins over a lot of prospects that we still have a lot of questions about, but I do think the upper echelon or the slightly more proven fighter can go out there and beat Alexis Davis. As long as you can deal with a fighter who basically just moves forward and does okay takedowns, I do think you can beat Alexis Davis, and I do think Pannie Kianzad is at least that good of a fighter.
Yeah, I mean, this is another one. Like, if you have any strong feelings, let us know over there in the chat. Apparently, Akash Deep got rid of a national treasure, a guy who I saw in a movie with, who was it, Ethan Wood? Is that who I'm looking for?
Ethan Hawke?
Frodo? Not Ethan Hawke. Pannie Kianzad, big
What's
favorite.
Ethan Hawke doing?
She opened a minus 235. She's now a minus 230 or thereabouts. The line went up for Davis, and then today it went back down. If you have a look at Alexis Davis, and if you really do like that staying power, she's now at a plus 187. So listen, you can make your own assumptions about it. But as crazy as the chat is going, let's see. Martial arts fans saying the Kianzad line is too high. I agree with you. Like, I don't have it on my card. 75% of the fans at Fight Night Picks have Kianzad. So, yeah, both going with the Swedish fighter here.
Yeah, I do like Kianzad in this one.
Both going with the Swedish fighter. In this one, Matt, we move up to a possible fight of the night. We're talking Movsar Evloev taking on Hakeem Dawadu. And again, when we're talking about fights that have ridiculous odds, I do love Movsar Evloev, but he has lost rounds in the UFC against guys that you thought he would have mopped the floor with. Now, again, for Movsar, former M1 Global Bantamweight champ, he's since moved from Russia to Tiger Muay Thai to American Top Team, training with some of the best in the world. He's getting ready for this one against Hakeem, who trains out of Calgary, out of one of the not-so-big gyms, even in Alberta. It's not like he's training out of Shea Bears up in Edmonton with KB Buller and Tanner Bozer.
Ooh.
a gym that's not really producing winners right now in the UFC. But for Hakeem Dawadu, really, really good Muay Thai, really good takedown defense. He can scramble with some of the best of them, and that's what makes this fight a lot of fun.
Hakeem Dawadu really is just a great version of that fighter who is. His stand-up's like a 9 out of 10 pretty much, and he's just great at defending takedowns. Now, is Dawadu great off his back? Not really. Maybe. No one really knows, and that's the thing. Like, we've only really ever seen him in one grappling exchange ever, and he got submitted after getting dropped. So, for Dawadu, it's just a big question mark. Like, often we talk about Adrian Yanez, for instance, it's, yes, we love his stand-up and everything, and he talks about how good his grappling is, and listen, I trust him. I don't think he would have lied to us, to our faces especially, but it's just a question mark. We haven't seen it yet, and that really does worry me about Hakeem Dawadu. Is he going to be able to go in there and scramble with Movsar Evloev as this fight progresses? Because I do think his cardio and his strength is good enough for that first round, and I do think that will be able to get him through a few sticky situations. But as this fight does progress, and as Movsar Evloev's pressure does start to get to Hakeem Dawadu, I do see Movsar Evloev just starting to sort of crash away at him. I like the takedowns. I do like his ability to mix up his takedowns too, and the fact that when Evloev is going for any of his wrestling transitions or takedowns, he's just making his opponent work, and I do think that's the key with Hakeem Dawadu. Dawadu's not a guy who's going to go out there and knock you out with one punch. He's not a guy who's going to go out there and overwhelm you with his volume like Max Holloway. He's kind of the best of both worlds, and I do think the fact that Dawadu's cardio is good is the fact that he can stay at his pace, and I do think if Movsar Evloev can make him fight at Movsar's pace, I think he'll be able to get away with it.
The best part about the chat, and hopefully it's not a big disappointment out there, but Potans is saying Canadian MMA is rolling in its grave as we speak, and up above I did see, where was it? Somewhere, makes for a good show. Somebody else was talking about the fact that Canadian MMA is not very good. I mean, you're going to be really disappointed finding out that we're Canadians.
It's still bad
know.
right now.
It's still not that great, but yeah, I mean, I look at this one in terms of the votes. It's not that close. 66% have Evloev to get the win. 34% going with Dawadu. I'm going with Movsar Evloev, but like I said at the start, again, that's why this card is so much fun, because even though I look at these odds and they're relatively far apart in some of these fights, in my mind's eye, there are a lot of really close fights out of these. So if you yourself can find kind of a little bit of parity in some of the odds and you can make some of it work for yourself, boom. But yeah, for me, going with Evloev in this one.
This is fight of the night for a reason. Like, we don't think this is not going to be a competitive fight. Like, I really do think this is going to steal the show, and I do think Movsar Evloev will walk away with the win.
Should be a great one, Matt. I mean, over 800 tuning in so far, only 166 likes.
Guys.
You can hit the super chat too, because that chat's going insane, and you can support the boys and the channel. Now, Matt, we move into our next fight. This one at 125 pounds. You have Lucky Lauren Murphy, our 2020 Fight Night Picks Fighter of the Year. Female Fighter of the Year, that is. Taking on Joanne Calderwood. Two neat gyms going at it. Gracie, Gracie Katy in Katy, Texas with Lauren Murphy. And then you get Syndicate for Joanne Calderwood. Now, last weekend we had a Syndicate fighter pop out. He unfortunately lost at his own game in Jordan Levitt. But for Joanne Calderwood, mixing in a little bit of the wrestling and really working your striking, that could work against somebody like Lauren Murphy. Two of the older fighters in this division still up close to the top.
Joanne Calderwood realized what she wasn't good at. She's not good at grappling. So you know what she went and did? She practiced her grappling. And listen, Joanne Calderwood's not the best grappler at women's flyweight. She's not even top like 15 grapplers, but she has gotten better. And I do think that's the point of what I'm trying to say right now, is that Joanne Calderwood, she was an absolute zero in the grappling department, to where she was getting submitted by people like Marina Moroz off her back, to being somewhat competent enough to at least be able to jump into her opponent's guard, go for a ground and pound herself without me cringing that she's going to immediately get submitted. Now, Jennifer Maia submitted her and it didn't look that great, but I do think that she has made at least minor improvements in her grappling game, and that's really what this fight comes down to, because we know what we're going to get from Lauren Murphy. She's got good boxing, not a lot of kicks, but she's just a really scrappy fighter who's got great forward pressure, good offensive takedowns, and really good volume boxing. I think Calderwood can outstrike Lauren Murphy, though, and I do see this as another one of those fights where Lauren Murphy can survive in the world of Joanne Calderwood, but at some point she's going to need the takedown. I don't think she can just exchange clinch elbows with Joanne Calderwood for 15 minutes and expect to win this fight. Especially the fact that Lauren Murphy does walk into a lot of her shots, and with her forward pressure, I think she's going to find herself into the clinch more often than not. I do have to ever so slightly pick Joanne Calderwood in this fight, because I do think her elbows from the clinch are going to really be the difference in this fight, and I don't like the fact that Lauren Murphy, along with Nate Diaz, along with Alexis Davis, they're in that, like, all we don't take damage very well team, and for those reasons, I do have to go and switch and go to Calderwood.
Matt, Sean McMinn hitting us up in the super chat. He's tossing out the foam finger.
Sean.
You know what, Sean? We're going to have fun in this one. Because of you and a red foam finger, let's go Sox. Let's have a good time.
Wow.
Hey, how's it going? I mean, it's like this was planned, but it wasn't. So when I look at this one, yeah, I do have a hard time with it. If we have a look at the odds, it's one that is close, and I would expect it to be close. You have Calderwood as the favorite, about a -135. You also have Lauren Murphy coming in at a +111. And if we have a look over on Fight Night Picks, just for the votes, and just to get an idea of what the fans are thinking, because sometimes it's a little bit different than Topology. Usually it's somewhat close, but 56% have Calderwood to 44% Murphy, and I can't switch my pick. I'm going to go with Lauren Murphy. I think the pressure, I think the takedowns, I think the full assault from Lauren Murphy could cause the difference. But again, if Joanne Calderwood was, similar to a male fighter, it's like just bleed, and it's like the damage. We're talking Darren Elkins. But Matt, we're going to move on from this one. We're split on that pick. We have Eryk Anders taking on one really tough out in Darren Stewart. Now, these guys, it's a rematch. It's the third rematch on this card. And the last one, it was down at middleweight. I had no idea at the start of the week that this one was going to be a light heavyweight. I honestly didn't. In the last couple of days, it's like, oh, by the way, this is a light heavyweight fight. So you look at it, and Eryk Anders has fought at light heavyweight before. He's won some fights. He's lost more than he's won. And for Darren Stewart, he's had such an interesting career. I mean, sometimes he looks like an absolute killer, like when he fought Maki Pitolo. Sometimes he has close fights with Kevin Holland where they strike. And sometimes he gets taken down by Judo Bartosz. We're taking that away from Judo Dan. It's Judo Bartosz. And then he fights Eryk Anders, rocks him, sellies, gets rocked, and just about got finished if Herb Dean decided he wanted to, and then there was the illegal knee. So, Matt, we have a fight like this that I would expect to be close. What are you thinking here?
This is a garbage fight. Let's just call it what it is. I'm sorry for coming at you with this energy, but I'm just going to be honest. You have no idea how excited I am for this fight card, except for this fight. Like, Darren Stewart, Eryk Anders at 205 does nothing for me. I understand they've got, like, unfinished business. I don't know if they're going to call this, like, grudge match, like Floyd Mayweather versus Logan Paul, but this is the one fight on the card where I'm like, listen, it could go either way, and I really don't care about what the outcome is. I used to be a big Darren Stewart guy, but the fact that he just doesn't have much volume in his fights really is the downfall of him, because listen, we might talk about the fact that the Kevin Holland fight was close. Both guys barely did anything. Like, if two guys don't do anything, yeah, the fight's gonna be close, but that's because nothing really happened. And Darren Stewart, there's a version out there that I think's okay, but he hasn't shown me that version in a very long time. I'm gonna pick Eryk Anders mainly because he has slightly more experience at 205 pounds, and he was winning their last fight up until it got stopped. But let's just call this fight what it is. Whoever lands first is gonna win this fight.
Matt the Mick hitting us up in the super chat saying stuck in traffic, enjoying Fight Night Picks. Matt the Mick,
thank you.
You can check us out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And I saw the comment way earlier by TJ who said, how's the Google Podcast thing going? Update, not all that great, but trust me, we'll be working on it. Just trust me on that one, Matt. Yeah, it is a really tricky one. I mean, I've said it before, like, we've kind of brought this in as garbage fights. This is one of those ones that normally in a rematch, it favors the guy that won the fight the first time, but you still do have to consider that Darren Stewart did the damage at the start, and then it didn't really work out. But this is one where, again, I liked Stewart the first time, but Anders won. I like Anders the second time. 66% of the fans have Anders to get the win. And in terms of the odds, it was close when I had a look before. Eryk Anders open to -110. He's a -148. And for Darren Stewart, open to -110. He's a +123. So if you have any really big kind of points on this one, have fun with it. Mark Romero to answer the question. Vendramini, he's an underdog. I got that. Adnan saying, Craig, what's your QMK parlay? Just tuned in. It hasn't come up yet. Neither leg. So you're going to have to wait and see, Matt. Our next fight, Drew Dober, Brad Riddell. And I want to hear from the fans in the comments section what you're thinking about this one, because this has been the most divided comment section of the week. And I've seen so much support for Drew Dober out there. Now, sometimes when we both pick a fighter, we'll get a lot of people that'll come in and say, you guys are overlooking this fighter. You guys don't know. This is the coming out party. And it very well could be. Drew Dober has definitely fought the higher level of competition in the UFC than Brad Riddell. That's no secret. That's no surprise. He has more experience in his overall MMA career. And that's fair. And normally I always side with that. Just that. Even if you've lost to really, really good fighters, sometimes it's tricky to try and make the pick. Brad Riddell, again, what's this guy great at? Striking. It's his main base. Now, a lot of people kind of had a little bit of flack in terms of, well, who does he have to train and wrestle with? Well, Shane Young, I guess.
Jamie Mullarkey.
No, not Jamie Mullarkey. Yeah, he trains in Australia and Brad Riddell trains in New Zealand.
No, but they did spend time training together.
Yeah, because they got COVID. No, that's a joke. But in this fight, you've got Brad Riddell, Frank Hickman in the corner, coming in with the boys. He made the trip over. And I'm seeing it over there in the comment section, Matt. A lot of people going with Drew Dober. Now, we were well, you were very heated about this fight before we even came on live. TJ hitting us up in the super chat saying, thanks, guys, because I answered the question. Ironing your Izzy shirt for tonight. I have a steamer, and they work really good. I like to steam my t-shirts. I don't iron them, but that's neither here nor there.
I like the fandom, though. Just to get back to that super chat, I like the fandom. Listen, there is not a better feeling than when your favorite fighter is at the top of a pay-per-view, and you're getting excited for their fight night. So listen, I'm excited for the excitement that you're going to experience in tonight's main event. Because listen, I've been there before. It is a great feeling when you're that dedicated to a fighter. But back to this fight. This should be a really interesting one, and I understand why a lot of people are siding with the experience of Drew Dober, or at least the experience against the higher level of competition, but this is my problem. Drew Dober fights in a very similar way to Brad Riddell. Like, a practically perfect Drew Dober fight is, okay, I'm going to be defending my opponent's takedowns. When I do get taken down, I'm getting back up to my feet. I could be landing big damaging hooks to my opponent. That's normally a Drew Dober fight. What does Brad Riddell normally do in his fights? The exact same thing. The difference is that Brad Riddell's technique, I just think, is a lot cleaner. Now, maybe Brad Riddell's weight cut is a lot worse than I think it was in my mind, and maybe he is more brittle than I believe he's going to be. Because I can tell you right now, Brad Riddell's got a wicked chin. Like, Jamie Mullarkey might not be the greatest fighter in the world, but I don't think he has pillow hands by any means. And the fact that Brad Riddell ate bombs from Jamie Mullarkey in their fight, and I thought it was really impressive. Here's the thing that I do worry about, and this kind of applies to both guys. They will both make fights closer than they have to be. Like, Brad Riddell doesn't have to be as hittable as he is, and Drew Dober gives up takedowns sometimes because he knows he is really good at getting back up to his feet. Now, I don't think the takedown's really going to play a part for either guy, and honestly, if anyone's going to be using the wrestling in this fight, it probably will be Drew Dober. At the end of the day, though, I do have to go with Brad Riddell. I just feel like his stand-up is a little bit cleaner, and I do like his dedication to the, I'm going to quote Teddy Atlas, in the water to the basement techniques. I love the leg kicks of Brad Riddell. I like the bodywork of him as well. Whereas when I look at Drew Dober, he's more of just a traditional headhunter, and I do like the overall work that Brad Riddell does to the legs and to the body.
I mean, Maddie B saying over in the chat, how's your rap career going? That they're both high-level strikers, and Dober has more power, and he's going to open up to the calf. And again, you have to kind of worry about it. We talked about it at the start of the week, the fact that Drew Dober, he's a southpaw. Brad Riddell coming out of orthodox. Will it cause him any issues? Personally, I don't think so, just because of the fact that Brad Riddell is such a high-level striker, and he has that fight IQ built up. JC hitting us up in the super chat saying, winner versus Ally Quinta? Maybe. Love y'all. The companion's going to be fun tonight. Yeah, make sure you check out the fight companion. We start about 5 minutes before the pay-per-view, so you get that bit of a jump. Matt, there's almost 1,000 people tuning in. If you want to work and bake the algorithm, you toss us a like, and then it'll get up over 1,000, and then we have more people over in the chat. But again, a lot of people split on this one.
Yeah, and it's going to be a really fun and competitive fight. Like, this was another one that we kind of had to leave off the fight of the night screen, but it definitely could have made an honorable mention because Drew Dober and Brad Riddell, they're going to bring it. Like, you have two strikers who move forward and who both have big power. Like, you don't really need to sell me anymore.
I like Riddell ever so slightly, but 53% of Riddell, 47% of Dober. If you feel strongly about it, feel strongly about it. But I don't. It's not on my card. But Matt, the next fight I do have on my card. Matt, I'm going with Jamal Hill, the first leg of the question mark kicks parlay. Now, last weekend, the question mark kicks parlay hit because I had, what was it, over in Sean Woodson's fight against Yusuf Salal. I had over 2.5, or the fight to go the distance was what it was, because I was split on the two. And then I had Tom Breeze. Well, Tom Breeze was out, so you get one, and technically I guess we hit. But
sure. In
this one, Matt, we have Paul Craig, Jamal Hill, and I like Jamal Hill in this one. Now, when I look at this fight, again, Jamal Hill, it was in the chat this week. Somebody said, I train with Jamal Hill. I've rolled with him. A, I'm a big guy. B, I'm a purple belt. And Jamal Hill own my stuff.
That's cool.
And that could happen. I mean, listen, a guy coming out of Black Lion Jiu-Jitsu, it's neat to see. You're taking on the Scottish Hit Squad's own Paul Craig. But if we know anything about Paul Craig, he's got that squeaky clean Scottish ground game that even finished a Magomed Ankalaev in the past, albeit in the last second. It was the biggest Hail Mary we've ever seen. I love this fight. But for me, Jamal Hill, if he can keep the fight standing, I mean, he's such a polished striker. Love to see it, and I've got him at a minus 250.
I like Jamal Hill, and I think Jamal Hill's probably the best prospect at 205 right now. But I'm going to bring up a bunch of red flags that I have in the back of my mind, and if anybody doesn't like what I'm saying, put it in the super chat, and I'll consider switching my pick, because I really like Jamal Hill so far, but I'm just going to have an open discussion. I hate the fact that he has been so confident in his grappling this week, because like you had mentioned, Magomed Ankalaev's really good at MMA, and he's really good defensive grappler too. The fact that Paul Craig was able to submit him with 1 second left in a fight is such an impressive task. I'm not saying he's going to replicate that success and get a last-second Hail Mary submission win, but I just think that when we talk about Paul Craig and his grappling acumen, we do have to talk about Paul Craig as one of those guys that, like, hey, just don't mess with him at all on the mat, because that's his only chance to win. That's the one hesitation I'm having, is that if Jamal Hill does just jump into the guard on Paul Craig after dropping him, we could get one of those, like, Fedor Fabricio Verdum matchups where it's like, okay, yes, you might drop him, but then you're going to jump into where he's the most dangerous and get yourself submitted. I love the stand-up of Jamal Hill. I love his knockout ability. I love his hand speed. I can't say enough things about Jamal Hill. It's just his overconfidence, I feel like, this fight week, along with the fact that he has talked a lot about his grappling, gives me some reservation about Jamal Hill in this fight. I just feel like if Paul Craig wins by submission, it won't be the most surprising thing in the world. With all that being said, though, I do have to stick with my pick, and I do think Jamal Hill's probably going to win by finish.
To go up even further into the chat, I did see somebody say, where was it? Jake Allen. I mean, hey, just stopping the boys. Well, really just warming the bench at the end, but you're doing a great job for the Habs. 53% takedown defense for Jamal Hill. The reason why it's like that is the fact that, I don't know, breakout KSW star and future title challenger at heavyweight Darko Stozic was able to take him down 6 times, which will happen because that's what Darko Stozic does. And normally when he gets on top, he hammers away. But Jamal Hill able to win that fight. That was one in Carolina. That was a fight card that had one Hannah Cyphers. Never going to forget that one. She lost that one at home. But again, I already played my hand. I'm going with I'm just kidding. I'm going with Jamal Hill. The first leg of the question mark kicks parlay. Matt, we got a great fight, and I know you have a particular appreciation of these two fighters. We talked about it at the start of the week. Demian Maia is up there in terms of middleweight and welterweight record books as far as submissions attempted, submissions earned. I mean, he's second to one Charles Oliveira in the UFC record books. 32 pro fights so far in the UFC. It's insane. 22-10 the overall record. But Matt, Demian Maia, it's the farewell tour. It's the goodbye. It's his last fight on his UFC contract. He's closer to 44 than he is 43. And he's taking on a Bilal Muhammad that, again, we used to say this about certain fighters, and now I think it has to be said for Bilal Muhammad. Even later on in his career, he's still adding little wrinkles to his game. I like Bilal Muhammad in this fight, but maybe sway me the other way.
I look at Bilal Muhammad very similarly to how we used to talk about Gilbert Burns, where it was, I like his striking, I like his grappling, but if he could put it all together, he would really become a problem. Bilal Muhammad's starting to put it all together. He's finally realized, okay, I have great striking, I have great wrestling, I have good jiu-jitsu. What if I've just figured out a way to mesh all of them together a lot better? And I feel like the Lyman Good fight was the first kind of turn in Bilal Muhammad's career, because he wasn't just the wrestler anymore. He went out and he volume struck against a guy who has really big power in Lyman Good, who you don't normally want to go out there and just strike with on the feet. Now, yes, he did go to the wrestling quite a bit in that fight, but if you're Bilal Muhammad, why wouldn't you? You can mix it up, and that's really going to be his key to this fight. He has the wrestling. He has the ability to dictate if this fight's going to be on the feet or on the mat. I doubt he's going to go out there and try to take down Demian Maia, because, of course, Demian Maia arguably the greatest grappler ever to go into the UFC, but I do like Bilal Muhammad in this fight. Now, I don't think Bilal Muhammad's in that, like, Leon Edwards, Kamaru Usman category. I really think he needs other top-tier wins, and personally, I'd love to see him go out there, maybe fight like a Michael Chiesa next, like one of those guys who still feel like they're a win or maybe 2 away from a title fight, but I do like Bilal Muhammad in this fight.
I mean, it's a really tricky one. If we go over in the comments section, JP is saying Maia belongs in a retirement home. Oh, come on. Come on now. But 80% of the fans have Fight Night picks going with Muhammad. Maybe it is the old parlay killer, but yeah, for me, I'm going to go with Demian Maia. And to respond to Fox Spiritus' comment, Bilal Muhammad's striking coach is Ben Askren. Go watch his fight against one Diego Lima. And I know that's a bad example, but listen, Diego's a striker if he's anything, and Bilal Muhammad did a great job striking against him.
Don't watch the Leon Edwards one.
Yeah, don't watch that fight. It's gross. Matt, our next fight, Leon Edwards is taking on Nate Diaz. Let us know in the comments section. Again, are you going with Nate Diaz? I mean, he's had a lot of fun. He rented a cool house in Arizona. He's been smoking blunts. He's having a good week. And he's going to be taking on Leon Edwards that looks absolutely shred city. Mind you, he did his last fight, and he also looked great in that fight in general. So for Leon Edwards, coming off of a gross end to a good fight against Bilal Muhammad, quick turnaround, he gets Nate Diaz. And Matt, I've been thinking about this all week, not even just today. Remember how good Khamzat Chimaev was last year? Like, how good he was? And then he's supposed to take on Leon Edwards in a main event, like, a few different times. wish nothing but the best for Khamzat and his return to MMA. But we have a fight here between Diaz and Edwards. I absolutely love this fight.
This should be really an entertaining fight at the bare minimum. Now, here's the weird thing. Why is no one talking about how the UFC made a fight for Nate Diaz where they tried to make the rules in Nate Diaz's favor? Like, it is kind of weird. I understand the UFC wants Nate Diaz to beat Leon Edwards, and I guess worst case scenario, Leon Edwards now has the biggest win of his career, and it's really easy to put him in title shot. So this is a win-win fight for both guys, but this is my big point. I look at this as a massive disadvantage for Nate Diaz. I look at it more as like, oh wow, Leon Edwards now has 10 more minutes to finish Nate Diaz. Because we have to be really honest with ourselves. Nate beat Conor 5 years ago. 5 years ago. That was a really, really, really long time ago. Like, this isn't something that just happened recently. They're very different people than they were back then. Like, Conor McGregor went from just being a famous fighter, and now he's just like a pretty much a globally famous just human at this point. And Nate Diaz, he's been in and out of the sport, but he's always very much been attached to the UFC. And I love Nate Diaz for what he's done. Like, everyone likes Nate Diaz if you like MMA because he's exciting, he's entertaining. Like, he brings kind of that it factor to it. But let's be honest, he's fighting one of the best fighters at 170 who's got power, speed, cardio, wrestling, defensive grappling. Like, Leon Edwards really is the total package. And the only guy out there who I think is a worse matchup for Nate Diaz than Leon Edwards would be like Vicente Luque. So personally, I just don't see how Diaz is going to get it done.
And Matt, we ended up over 1,000 viewers at a time. So pat yourselves on the back. Toss a like for the boys. I know
Good
we can
job.
get up over 3. But I want to see us get up over 500 likes on the video. If you're tuning in later on today, we have the Fight Companion. We're going to be giving away some of those special Prism cards that we broke earlier on in the week. The Francis Ngannou Fireworks. I saw that one going for like $50 on eBay.
Ooh.
And the Derek Brunson Green Edition. Now, Matt, over there in the Super Chat, Bub Collins saying, Stockton's owned by submission. Have a great night, boys. They made those rules because Diaz makes the rules. Superstar status. I mean, for me, second leg of the question mark kicks parlay, I've got the over 1.5 rounds. It's a minus 250. So if you're playing along at home, Jamal Hill minus 250, over 1.5, Edwards and Diaz minus 250. It was a minus 104 when I put it together, and I took it, and I'm going to go with it. So that's what I'm riding with. But Matt, when I do look at this one, Leon Edwards is a huge favorite in this fight. And yeah, do I think he'd win 9 times out of 10? For sure. But it always scares me when somebody's more than a 5-1 favorite. He opened a minus 275. Wish I got him then. He's a minus 542 right now. Nate Diaz coming back at a plus 393. There's so many different reasons why I would like Leon Edwards in this one. Can Nate Diaz throw it back? Maybe, but I just don't see it.
So, Bub, I hope you have a great night. And listen, this will be interesting. Can Nate Diaz get this fight to the mat? That's really my only question. I don't think Nate Diaz can stay with Leon Edwards at all because this is the issue. Nate Diaz's best position for himself is that weird kind of long-range boxing range. And that's where Leon Edwards can completely destroy his calf. Like, people don't realize Leon Edwards is kind of like Chris Paul, where it's like, okay, nothing he does really jumps off the page, but it's the fight IQ. It's the reason he does everything. Like, Leon Edwards beat Vicente Luque. Why do people not talk about that? I love Vicente Luque's fighting style, and I really like watching him fight, and I think he's a future, like, top contender. But Leon Edwards beat him, and we're in a fight where he mixed up with his wrestling, he outstruck him, like, he looked great in that fight, and I think Vicente Luque is a hell of a lot better than Nate Diaz, especially at 170 pounds, so I don't know how you cannot beat Leon, or how you cannot pick Leon Edwards.
And Bad Boy saying winner fights the champion, so it was said, the winner of this fight gets the next title shot after the next title shot, so we'll see how that
and, okay, yes, Usman would be the worst matchup, but I really doubt Nate Diaz is going to jump into a title shot anytime soon.
All right, Matt, flipping it on over to our co-main event of the evening. Now, we talked about it where we were on the now Marcus Deegan show, but before it was the What Happens Here podcast. And listen, we had the opportunity to have a little bit of a say with Brandon Moreno. We talked Legos, we talked pinatas. People
Great
thought
guy.
that we were bad Canadians, and they thought we were asking a question we shouldn't have, but his family makes pinatas for a living, and his brother's very good at it. Now, if we focus on this fight, Brandon Moreno had a great opportunity his last time out, and he fought admirably. Like, he put on a really good fight. It takes 2 to tango, as they always say, and Brandon Moreno brought it. Now, for Devison Figueiredo, was he one of the last ones to weigh in yesterday? Yeah, he was. But he weighed in, and he made weight, and he's one of those guys that rehydrates big time. Now, he's going to be at a height disadvantage in this fight, as he normally is. So, do you expect more of the same like we got in the first fight, or is this going to be another Joe B beatdown?
It's really odd, because I don't think Brandon Moreno's going to go down as fast as Joseph Benavidez did. Like, Brandon Moreno at least moves with the shots a lot better. That's one thing about Brandon Moreno that you can't, it's not a huge neglect on him. Like, he does roll with his punches, he doesn't have a bad chin. The few things that I do worry about, I should say, is We talked about the weight cut a lot for Figueiredo, and I don't want to pat myself on the back, called him missing weight in the Benavidez fight. He's always the guy who's going to have those weight cutting issues, and I don't even know if you want to call them issues. It's just a really hard weight cut for him to get down to 125. I understand he's always going to be one of the last guys to get in, who's going to weigh in, but for the most part, like, he's going to be in there and he's going to have really good cardio. The thing about their first fight, though, that hasn't been talked about enough was he cut weight 21 pounds before, or 21 days before he did for their fight. Like, Figueiredo was just coming off of a weight cut before he went into their second fight. And the thing that Tony Ferguson talked a lot about before he went into the Gaethje fight was he had that weird thing where he cut weight and then he went back and then fought Gaethje the 2 weeks later. I was a little worried about Figueiredo back then. I'm not now. I do think with the full training camp and the fact that he does have his own gym now, I think this is the best version of Figueiredo.
And no food poisoning either. And that was a big story after that first fight. So when you do look at this one, Matt, for Deiveson Figueiredo with the fans at Fight Night Picks over on Instagram, it's fairly easy to find. It's right over there. And you can take your picks on all of these fights. But when we look at this one, 59% Figueiredo to 41% going with Brandon Moreno. This should be an absolute great fight. I mean, what are you thinking here? Because for me, I've got Figueiredo in the rematch, and I'm feeling fairly confident in it, but Brandon Moreno is one of those guys. You can never count him out. There's so many great fighters in this division, and I saw the graphic out there. I think it was MMA Fighting, put it out there on Twitter, the fact that the top 4 fighters, their only losses in the UFC are all decision losses. So maybe you do like this one to go the distance, but for me, as Christian Gonzalez is saying, chill pick Figueiredo, so maybe we have to go the opposite way with it, but I still have Figueiredo here.
I like Figueiredo in this fight, and this is the thing. I think Brandon Moreno is going to go for more takedowns in their second fight, and I do think that it's going to be a big focus for his game plan. The problem is that Figueiredo's best position is his guillotine, and I really do think that Brandon Moreno is going to get caught in a submission at some point throughout this fight. I do think his cardio is going to be a really big weapon for him, and I do worry about Figueiredo tiring as this fight progresses, but I do think Figueiredo, especially at 100% power earlier on in this fight, is going to be a big submission threat against Moreno.
Pat Dwyer hitting us up in the super chat saying, Deiveson first round finish. Always appreciate FNP, Matt. In the office, I do have a great picture over on the side. And you know what? Let's go for a tour. I mean, look at that. It's just a shame that poor Joe B, no longer. And you also have Tank Abbott and one really tough out. And Don Fry. All kinds of great stuff over there. But yeah, Matt, both of us going with Deiveson Figueiredo in this one. And then we're talking about our main event of the evening. This one, another rematch. A really good fight between two great guys. Marvin Vettori taking on Israel Adesanya. In the first fight, split decision. It went the way of Adesanya. But again, you go back and rewatch that fight, and it's hard to make any arguments that Vettori won the first or the second. And in the third round, it was a tricky one. So when you're focusing on this fight, Matt, what do you expect out of both guys? Obviously, we know how good the kickboxing is out of Adesanya, so I guess I should reframe that. What do you expect out of Vettori early on if he's able to kind of get any edge?
I'm going to switch this around. First of all those people in the chat saying that Figueiredo's too emotional, where's that energy for the main event? Like, if you think Figueiredo's too emotional, what do you think Marvin Vettori is? Do you think he's calm, cool, and collected going in there? You think Marvin Vettori's going to 100% go in there and just be like, oh yeah, he's not going to just start screaming a lot? This is my thing. If you think emotions play a big factor into a fight, you can't not think it's going to play a factor into this main event. Because right now, Israel Adesanya seems like he does in all of his fights. Calm, cool, and collected. Like, fighting isn't a big deal to Israel Adesanya. For Marvin Vettori, I understand, like, this is his thing. I'm very angry. I get it. But, like, at a certain point, I need you to be more than angry, and I just need you to acknowledge the fact that you didn't win the first fight. That's the big thing I keep on going back to. Marvin, I'm talking to you right now. I know you're getting ready. I know you're fighting here soon. But let's be real. You lost the first 2 rounds. You got beat up on the feet. In the third round, you did great work with your takedowns. But at a certain point, you have to be honest with yourself. Last basketball reference, Craig, I promise. When Michael Jordan lost to the Pistons in the Eastern Conference Finals, he said, okay, I'm too small. I lost that, but I'm going to come back and I'm going to make myself better. You know what happened the next year? He gained a bunch of muscle, improved his game, and then beat that same Pistons team. Marvin Vettori never had that, like, oh, I lost. The whole time, he's like, okay, I beat Israel Adesanya. I'm good enough to beat Israel Adesanya because I've improved since our first fight. So even if he has improved, well, I already beat him, so I'm probably going to beat him again. I don't like that mindset at all. Like, I really do think if Marvin Vettori came into this fight, and if all he said was, hey, I didn't win our first time around, but if you watch my last 5 fights and look how much I've improved, then hey, I think I can beat him now. That's all I needed to hear. Then maybe I could pick Marvin Vettori. But the fact that A, he is very hittable. B, the emotions are a big factor. And C, I just don't think his wrestling and overall jiu-jitsu is good enough to hold Adesanya down. Like, that's the thing. I think he can take Adesanya down, but I don't think he can hold him down, and I really do think that's the big key.
I don't give a rip about the emotions. I mean, Marvin Vettori was mad before he fought Carl Roberson.
That's what I mean.
Messed him up. Garrett over there in the super chat saying, Figueiredo and Vettori are both emotional. Moreno and Izzy for the win. I don't care about any of the emotions. There are emotional fighters out there. I mean, look at it. Nate Diaz was a mental fighter, and he's fighting coming up this weekend. Shouts to, I mean, listen, what's Nate Marquardt doing these days? What's Gray Maynard doing these days? Just OG legends of the sport, but Gray Maynard, shouts to him. But when I look at this one, I really don't care about the emotions. Marvin Vettori's been emotional in every single one of his fights. He got mad at Kevin Holland. Did he get peppered a little bit before he worked the takedown? Sure he did. But he ultimately walloped him and made him kind of have to consider even more to go to AK. So when I look at a fight like this, and again, when I consider the odds, I'm still at the same spot that I was at the start of the week. Adesanya opened a minus 235 favorite. He's a minus 256. We have a look at Marvin Vettori. He opened a plus 200. He's a plus 206. When I look at the votes at Fight Night Picks, 79% are going with Adesanya to 21% Marvin Vettori. But if I know anything about 21% of fans going with a fighter, 21% have Claudio Puelles to win last weekend, and so did I. And boom goes the dynamite. I'm going with the Italian dream in Marvin Vettori because I think you learn a lot out of the first fight.
But he didn't. This is my whole point.
You can't be so trigger happy. You can't be so, again, you can't decide, hey, I'm going to strike with the striker. It's got to be takedown, takedown, takedown right from minute 1 to the very end of minute 25. So for me, I'm going to go with Marvin Vettori here. I'm not going to change my pick. And yeah, that's just the way it is.
It's just, he hasn't come to terms with the fact that he lost the first fight. That's my big problem. If you don't know what you did wrong in the first fight, how do I expect you to fix those issues now? Like, I don't even love Israel Adesanya and think like, oh, he's like pound for pound top 3 or anything. This is a really bad matchup for Vettori. Like, Vettori on the feet. He's a good southpaw. He has basic punching power, but he's not a big enough knockout threat that I think he's going to really get the respect of Adesanya. And I think his takedowns are good up against the cage, but not a big enough threat in the open mat. Listen, I think Vettori might have some success, but I think this will be very similar to like Jennifer, Maia, Valentina, and I like Adesanya quite a bit in this one.
A lot of people saying wow over in the chat. Did you not watch the fight? Did you not watch? I thought Craig might change his pick for QMK. Los Non saying no. Matt, over in the chat, it was also by Patrick saying, where can I get the hoodie, bro? It's not in the shop. No, we made them special.
But the baseball jersey.
Yeah, there's not really any of those left.
Oh,
but
okay.
Matt, that's the entire card. So if anybody missed it earlier on, we're going to go back to the bottom, all the way up through the top. There's over 1,000 watching, but only 362 likes. I need a couple more of those. We got to get over 500 for this. It's easy. It's really, really easy. So let's go back down to the start, Matt. We have Carlos Felipe taking on Jake Collier. This is one that we were split on at the start of the week. Still split on it now. But again, can't argue the fact that it is a close fight. I'm going to go with Collier, but you still have Felipe.
This is as fun as an unranked heavyweight fight can get, but yeah, I still got Felipe in this one.
All right, Matt. We'll move on to our next one. Fares Ziam taking on Luigi Vendramini. I've got Vendramini here.
I do have Vendramini, but this is a close fight between two really, really good prospects. And this isn't fight of the night because there's just so many fight of the night picks, I guess. But no, I do like Vendramini.
All right, Matt. We move into our next one. We have Chase Hooper taking on Steven Peterson. I had Peterson at the start of the week, but the weight cut scares me. But again, I can kind of see it both ways. So for me, I'm going to go with Chase Hooper. But again, I can definitely see Peterson winning this one.
I worry about the weight cut in Peterson. That's really the key to this. It's not that Chase Hooper's really going to go on to become a champ or anything, but we're still trying to figure out how good he is, Chase Hooper, at the end of the day. I think he is good enough to beat Steven Peterson, though.
Yeah, Matt, both of us going with Hooper, but Terrance McKinney's taking on Matt Frevola. I didn't like the odds at the start of the week because they were silly, but now they make a lot of sense. I mean, if you do look at Matt Frevola, he's slightly more than a 2-1 favorite on some sites, an average of minus 201. So there you go. For McKinney coming in a plus 166 for his debut, I'm going to go with the guy that's been here for a bit. I'm going to be going with Matt Frevola, but it is a tight fight.
It is, but again, Matt Frevola's been getting ready for this. Like, he knew he had a UFC fight in Phoenix, Arizona on this date for the last 2 months. And yes, stylistically, his opponent might not have been that much similar to McKinney, but I do like Frevola at the end of the day.
All right, fair enough. We move into our next one. Pannie Kianzad taking on Alexis Davis. Tricky fight. Going Kianzad?
Alexis Davis might be good forever, but maybe not. Like, we sort of know what we're going to get from Alexis Davis. You know you're going to get the pressure. You know you're going to get the wrestling. I just think Pannie Kianzad is good enough to counter those two basic things.
Fair enough. Also going with Kianzad. Matt Movsar, Evloev taking on a really tough out, and Hakeem Dawadu. but I can't side with the Canadian in this one. I've got Evloev.
This is going to be one of those one way or the other fights. Either Dawadu defends a bunch of takedowns and just knocks out Movsar, or Movsar takes it in a bunch of times and makes him look absolutely foolish on the ground. I think Movsar is going to win this fight, but again, this is fight of the night for a reason.
Should be a good one there, both going Evloev. Next one, Lauren Murphy taking on Joanne Calderwood. Surprised you switched the pick, but I've got Murphy here and you've got Calderwood.
I think this is a really fun fight, and again, normally Lauren Murphy, she's 5 years older than her opponent, but this one, age-wise, they are pretty close. I do like Calderwood, though, just because of her clinch elbows, and the fact that Lauren Murphy does accept damage in a very similar way to a Nate Diaz, and I think Calderwood can score just by doing that.
Mike Chaplow heading over to the comment section. Have a good weekend next weekend, and saying breaking that 1K, hell yeah. We're almost there, Matt. Now, our next one, Eryk Anders, Darren Stewart. It's a rematch. Now it's up a weight class at 205 pounds. They're first, obviously, at middleweight. I've got Anders just based on the fact that he looked good in the first one. Could Darren Stewart go out there and knock him out? 100%. Eryk Anders is hittable, so I'd be scared if I threw this one as a parlay piece, but I do like Anders here.
Again, I don't say this very often, but this fight isn't it, guys. This is the one I'm like, oh wow, I gotta make sure I'm parked in front of a couch for. I do like Eryk Anders. Again, the slight experience edge at 205, but whoever lands first is gonna win.
100%. Now, Matt, we move into our next one. We have Drew Dober taking on Brad Riddell. I've got Brad Riddell ever so slightly, but really looking forward to it.
This should be a very, very fun fight, but I do agree with you. I do like Brad Riddell.
Matt, both going with Riddell. Our next one, Paul Craig taking on Jamal Hill. First leg of the question mark kicks parlay. It's Jamal Hill at a minus 250 here.
I do like Jamal Hill in this fight. For Paul Craig, you beat Shogun, that's cool, but I just don't think that version of Shogun is very comparable to what Jamal Hill's going to be.
It's a shame. I mean, listen, a childhood idol in Shogun who a tapping due to strikes.
It's terrible.
Yikes, Matt. Our next one, we have Bilal Muhammad taking on Demi and Maia. Is it a legend killing Tor, or is the legend going to win?
I think the legend's on his way out. For Maia, it is last fight of his contract. They're giving Bilal a fairly good stylistic matchup for himself after the eye poke he took to Leon Edwards. So I do have to pick Bilal Muhammad in this fight.
Tricky one. Both of us going with Bilal Muhammad. Our next one, Leon Edwards, Nate Diaz. My second leg of the question mark kicks parlay. Over 1.5 rounds. It's a minus 250. You round it out. But yeah, ultimately going with Leon Edwards here.
The elbows, leg kicks, just the overall game of Leon Edwards should win this fight for him. It should be really fun because we are getting this one for a 5-round sort of main event type atmosphere, I guess. But listen, it'll be a fun fight at the very least. I like Leon Edwards.
All right, Matt. We move into our co-main event of the evening. Going with an and still for Deiveson Figueiredo.
This was fight of the year to some people last year. It was one of the best fights really ever. Phenomenal fight, but I do agree with you. I do have to pick Figueiredo at the end of the day.
All right, Matt, both going with Figueiredo. And in our main event of the evening, we're split on it. I've got the Italian Dream. But again, if Adesanya goes out there and pieces him up, it's understandable based on the odds, but I do think Marvin Vettori's learned from that fight. He's on a heck of a heater. I think he's going to get the win.
I think Adesanya's got all the tricks in the book to be able to beat a guy like Vettori. I think Vettori's a good fighter, but I don't think he's as good as Jan Blachowicz. I think people are really discrediting Jan Blachowicz and how good of a fighter he is.
Heck of a fighter.
He is. When they talk about the loss to, or when they talk about Adesanya's loss to Blachowicz, they're just like, oh, he lost to Jan. But it's like, hey, he lost to Jan, you know? It matters how you say it. I do like Adesanya in this fight.
All right, Matt. So that is the entire card. Fight Night Picks question mark kicks the undercard, the early prelims. They start in about about an hour. And if you tune in later on tonight, 5 minutes before the pay-per-view starts, you just sync up, you get ready, we hang out, we have a little bit of pop and popcorn. Matt eats the party favor that is the popcorn and then gets his mouth full of popcorn, and it's not good, and I'll say popcorn again. We're going to be giving away 2 of those cards that we were able to get out of our Panini Prism Debut Edition Blaster Box. You got a Francis Ngannou Green Parallel Fireworks, and you've got a Green Parallel of Derek Brunson trying to punch Edmund Shabazian with a stiff jab. So, Matt, I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, if you haven't tossed a like, you toss it up there. We get up over 500 of them. It's going to be something special. Subscribe if you haven't as well, because we get some more great content coming out with the channel. A lot of really good interviews banked. I know I've got 3 sitting there. Juicy J's one of them, Julian Rose. So we tease that. That's going to be coming out tomorrow. And hey, I'm really looking forward to next weekend's card. Dan Ige, Korean Zombie in the main event. There's so many great fights out there. So overall, it's going to be a great night. Great night of fights. UFC 263. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. And as we always say, let's get into it.
Ladies and gentlemen, recorded in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. It's time for Fight Night Picks with your host, Craig and Matt.